Are you freaking kidding me? The Acolyte is yet another show on what might as well be called Disney Minus by this point that has received an infamous reputation, to say the least, all across the World Wide Web. And as easy as it's been for others to point towards canon issues, or a very strange and askew take on the Jedi, as being the big problem on hand, I would personally make the argument that none of that would even matter in the long run if the show itself didn't feel so cold and empty. Just about every episode thus far has started off at whatever point the last episode left off on, gone through whatever semblance of story was left off the cutting board, and then just zipped over to the credits at the most random and sudden of times. Despite having a pretty solid murder mystery going on and some fairly likable characters in the mix, every episode just feels like it begins and ends without any sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. And after seeing this same problem infect Disney Plus shows for at least the past 3 or 4 years, the concept people keep enforcing that Lucasfilm, and up until recently Marvel, don't know how to make TV shows rings more and more true with every attempt, except I personally don't blame them for that. But a lot of producers behind Disney Plus's original content are struggling to gauge about television is actually pretty well illustrated in the first episode of one of my favorite streaming shows, Daredevil. Here, after some solid introductions to our lead and his partner, we kick off our scenario with our other lead, Karen Page, getting framed for a murder she didn't commit. On Disney Plus today, this scenario probably would have been dragged out all the way to the end of the season, but instead, within the runtime of the episode by itself, she gets proven innocent and decides to join Matt and Foggy on their ultimate venture to take down Wilson Fisk and bring justice back to Hell's Kitchen. So instead of dragging out this one scenario throughout the entire season, it creates this mini adventure to embark on and promises 12 more mini adventures that ultimately add up to the larger lump sum. That's what makes episodes of television wholesome as episodes, because they're individually wholesome as well as the pieces to the larger picture and not just the latter like, yeah, I know, give me a second. They keep audiences hooked for what they're building up to for the grand finale. Of course, I mean, they have to keep viewership going, but they know that during the 11 minutes to an hour that they're there in front of the screen, they need to keep something complete to consume, as they know that that's part of what draws audiences back to catch the next chapter of the larger saga later on. Yes, episodes are, by definition, the smaller parts of a larger whole, but the reason we enjoy them as episodes is because each one has complete individual adventure to embark on, and each one knows to give us a sense of accomplishment before hooking us back with the larger conflict still at hand. This is what the producers at Disney Plus just can't seem to get through their thick skull, as most of them just take one large conflict and make that the only conflict throughout the entire season and just break up the story revolving around that into 6 to 8 parts and call those episodes. Painfully obvious bad way to go about making a TV show, but it is similar to one medium where one central conflict being utilized for the entire narrative is more beneficial for the coherence of a narrative. Movies. They thrive on the idea of keeping the tension of one conflict going through the entire narrative, but they thrive on it while these Disney Plus shows struggle because after continuing to keep audiences' attention for that one viewing session of 2 to 3 hours, they eventually lead to that same sense of accomplishment, leaving the viewer satisfied. The people at Lucasfilm know how to make these larger spanning narratives, sometimes one's a little too large, and most likely because of the trend in the past decade of shows needing to be just as cinematic as movies, Disney opted to utilize them to make content for their streaming platform. But as good as they can be at making movies sometimes, yeah, I agree, they have no earthly idea how to make TV shows. Again, they know how to create a larger gripping narrative, but the practice they don't seem particularly skilled at least in this case, is utilizing that same narrative structure within the smaller parts, i.e. the episodes, as well as the larger part that is the season. They instead treat their plots more like those of movies where they just keep the tension of the main hook going until the very end. But the reason this method of coasting on that same tension doesn't work for a show, especially a weekly release like The Acolyte, is because when the same one tension drags out for 8 weeks, 1 hour at a time, instead of just a lump sum of 2 hours, every cutaway at the end of each episode, in quotes, just ends up feeling cold and empty because there's no sense of satisfaction or accomplishment for the audiences to bite on. Apart from episode 3, the closest we've gotten so far to an episode with its own narrative, every one of the 5 episodes of The Acolyte we've gotten so far could start and stop at any time other than what they already have, and nothing would be added or lost. They start, they go, they stop. They start, they go, they stop. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Screw this crap, to me my X-Men. At the end of that one Daredevil episode, you feel a sense of victory and progress. But with every episode of The Acolyte, you're just like, what? That's where it's ending? What? That's where it's ending? What? That's where it's ending? You'd be just as well just starting up one of the prequels and then just shutting it off every 30 minutes just to come back for it for another 30 minutes a week later. Don't bother picking an endpoint, it's not gonna matter. I don't necessarily blame Lucasfilm for this. I mean, they were doing what they were tasked to do as the movie studio designated to make shows. Flaws like disastrous editing, flat performances, and over-reliance on the volume, and shoddy effects, yeah, of course I blame them for that. But I have no doubt those problems wouldn't stand out nearly as much if the episode episodes they were throwing at us, at the absolute least, felt more wholesome and complete. Television isn't simply 8 hours of a story with one tension that we see broken up into pieces that eventually make a whole. They're an hour-long adventure with a tension of its own that we return to as the highlight of our week that just so happens to be one of the many pieces that add up to a larger whole after weeks, a lot of times even months, of adventures that were individually fun and wholesome. And yes, while we're on the topic, I would love for Star Wars, if they're not ready to make it eventful again, to be fun, wholesome, and especially adventurous again. But every time that the Acolyte kicks off an episode with the same arc that we've been following and cuts it back off with no conclusion to anything it's been following, it just irks my faith in the studio even further than it's already been irked. Intrigue and enticement in your main conflict is only going to carry your story so far, especially if you're asking us to be wrapped in it every Tuesday night for 8 weeks. We love to be intrigued, we love to be enticed, but above anything else, especially in the long haul like this, we love to be entertained. And whether in the form of a 2-hour movie or an 11-minute cartoon, we're far more entertained by complete, satisfactory stories than we will ever be by these broken up hacks of one story they keep throwing at us. Disney, you have companies that know how to make shows like this, hand them the reins of their content and let Lucasfilm flourish with what they know. Because as much success as you keep fooling yourself into thinking that you have, this disturbance in the Force you're causing is making millions of voices cry out in terror and suddenly flip back over to Netflix.